Introduction. The mysterious arrival. In the cold, silent depths of space, the Exetherian Empire ruled. For centuries, their technology had advanced far beyond anything known in the galaxy. The Exetherians had conquered many star systems, their ships dominating the skies of countless worlds. They believed they were the most powerful race in the galaxy, unmatched by any species. Nothing could challenge their might. But that was about to change. On the outskirts of Exetherian space, far from their homeworld, something strange was happening. Ships, unlike anything they had ever seen before, were approaching. The Exetherians had picked up unusual readings on their sensors. These signals were too large to ignore, too powerful to be from any species they knew. They were coming from human space, a race that Exetherians had never taken seriously. Humans were primitive, their technology crude compared to the vast empires of the galaxy. But now, the Exetherians were starting to question everything they thought they knew about the humans. At the heart of the Exetherian Empire, in their vast, gleaming capital, the leaders of the empire sat in a large war council room. The walls were adorned with images of past victories, reminders of the many worlds they had conquered. The atmosphere was tense, more serious than ever before. The Exetherian leaders, towering beings with long, thin limbs and sharp eyes, stared at the large holographic display in front of them. It showed the incoming human fleet, large and moving swiftly toward their system. An advisor stepped forward, his voice calm but filled with concern. Supreme Leader, the readings show something unprecedented. The ships they are sending are enormous, larger than any we've encountered before. We believe this is a full invasion fleet. The Supreme Leader, a being known for his cold intelligence and ruthlessness, leaned forward. He had never heard of such a thing. Impossible, he muttered. Humans are nothing. Their technology is primitive. How could they possibly build such ships? The advisor's voice trembled slightly as he spoke again. These ships, my leader, are unlike anything in our database. They are colossal, each one capable of carrying hundreds of thousands of soldiers, enough firepower to challenge even our might. The Supreme Leader turned to his generals, who stood silently by, awaiting his orders. His eyes narrowed. Prepare our fleet. We will show these humans what it means to challenge the Exetherian Empire. In the control room of the Exetherian war fleet, the atmosphere was one of urgency. Orders were being barked, and the crew scrambled to prepare their ships for what seemed to be an inevitable confrontation. The Exetherian fleet, sleek and deadly, was ready to launch into battle at a moment's notice. Their warships were among the fastest and most advanced in the galaxy. They had never feared any race before. But there was something unsettling about the approaching human ships. The scale of them was unbelievable. Each ship was massive, dwarfing even the largest Exetherian war vessels. The humans, who had once been seen as nothing more than a nuisance, were now showing a force that made even the Exetherian commanders feel a twinge of doubt. In the darkness of space, the human fleet grew closer. The Exetherians had no idea how they were able to construct such ships. Their sensors couldn't fully detect the ship's true size. It was as if the very ships themselves were cloaked in a field of power, hiding their true strength. "Launch the scout ships," ordered the Supreme Leader. "We need to learn everything we can about these human ships." As the small scout ships sped toward the human fleet, the Exetherians watched in disbelief as the vastness of the human ships became clearer. These were not simple battleships. They were enormous starcruisers, towering giants that seemed to consume the very space around them. The scout ships returned with new data, but it was nothing like they had expected. The human ships were built with materials that Exetherians had never encountered before. The hulls of the ships appeared to be unbreakable, and their power sources were unlike anything they had in their own arsenal. The Supreme Leader stood silent, staring at the holographic image of the approaching human fleet. His mind raced. How could this be? How could a race as young as humans build such powerful ships? There was no time to waste. The Exetherians had been known as conquerors, but now they faced something new. something they couldn't fully understand. "Prepare for battle," the Supreme Leader finally commanded, his voice steely. "The humans will learn what it means to challenge the Xetherian Empire. We will crush them before they have a chance to strike." But deep down, even the Supreme Leader couldn't shake the feeling that he might be making a mistake. The power of these human ships was unlike anything he had ever imagined. And as the fleet of Xetherian warships moved toward the unknown, a sense of uncertainty spread through the ranks. The Xetherians had never faced an enemy like this before, and for the first time in many years, they weren't entirely sure they would win. In the distance, the human fleet continued its approach, silent and confident, as if they already knew the outcome. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change the galaxy forever. The human fleet emerges. The Xetherians watched nervously as the colossal human fleet drew closer, their sensors now fully capturing the scale of the ships. Each one was an imposing giant, each surpassing even the most advanced Xetherian warships in size. There was no mistaking it. These ships were designed for battle, and they were ready. On the bridge of the lead human starship, Captain Jameson stood at the helm, a look of calm determination on his face. The crew around him moved with precision, their eyes focused on the holographic map displaying the Xetherian fleet ahead. The humans had spent years building these ships, overcoming countless challenges, and they were finally ready to face the galaxy's most powerful empire. "Captain, the Xetherian fleet is in range," said Lieutenant Harris, glancing up from his station. "They're waiting for us to make the first move." Jameson nodded. "Let them wait. We're not here to start a fight. We're here to send a message." The tension in the control room was palpable, but the crew held their ground. This moment had been years in the making. The human starships, massive in scale and seemingly indestructible, were a testament to human ingenuity. They were built with the latest technology, including energy shields capable of absorbing even the most powerful attacks, and they were equipped with weaponry that could wipe out entire fleets in a matter of minutes. The Xetherian fleet had never seen anything like this before. Each human ship towered over the Xetherian vessels. Some ships were even larger than their entire command stations. The alien fleet, sleek and fast, appeared small and insignificant next to the massive human vessels. Captain Jameson turned to his communications officer. "Send the message," he ordered. The officer, a young woman named Lieutenant Tran, nodded and activated the communication system. The message, simple yet bold, was sent across the stars to the Xetherians. "This is humanity. We come in peace, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. Leave us be." The words hung in space like a challenge. The Xetherians, watching the transmission, were taken aback. Never had any race spoken to them like this. Most of their enemies, when faced with the might of the Xetherian fleet, either surrendered or fled. Yet here were humans, declaring their presence boldly without fear. The Supreme Leader of the Xetherian Empire watched the message in stunned silence. They dare," he muttered, disbelief in his voice. He turned to his generals, his tone filled with frustration and anger. "They are not even asking for mercy. They come to us with this arrogance. Destroy them." But as the order was about to be given, a quiet tension spread through the ranks. The sheer size and power of the human ships made even the most seasoned Xetherian commanders hesitate. These ships weren't like any fleet they had faced before. They could see the energy shields flickering faintly on the ship's hulls, proof that the humans were ready for battle, but that didn't explain how they had constructed such vast ships. The Xetherians weren't used to hesitation, but today, for the first time, it was their turn to feel uncertain. Meanwhile, aboard the human fleet's flagship, Captain Jameson stood tall, watching the alien fleet. His crew was ready. They had trained for this moment, and they had faith in their technology, in their ships, and in each other. "We don't need to fight," Jameson muttered, though he knew what was at stake. "But we will fight if they make us." As the seconds ticked by, the Xetherian fleet remained still, unsure of how to proceed. The massive human ships loomed like giants, their sheer presence pressing in on the smaller, more agile Xetherian ships. The very size of the human fleet made the Xetherians feel small and insignificant, as if they were facing something far beyond their control. The tension built as the two fleets stood in silence, suspended in space. The human fleet didn't move a single inch. The Xetherians watched them, trying to assess what was happening. No shots were fired. No lasers crossed the empty space between them. But the message had been received. For the first time in their history, the Xetherians were not the ones who struck first. Instead, they waited. They hesitated, unsure whether they should risk a battle with these human giants. The idea that the Xetherians, conquerors of countless worlds, were now uncertain before a race they had once dismissed as weak was a thought that rattled their core. And yet, the silence between the two fleets felt like a ticking clock, waiting for one side to make the first move. The human fleet, unyielding and confident, waited as well. Their ships were built for this moment, to stand firm and show the universe that humanity had arrived. The Xetherians could either retreat and leave humanity in peace, or it could face the power of the human fleet head-on. Captain Jameson looked out of the massive windows of his ship, staring into the blackness of space, and then turned to his crew. "Hold steady. The future of humanity rests on our next move." As the two fleets faced off, the galaxy watched in suspense, knowing that this confrontation would mark the beginning of a new era. Tension builds. The first strike. The stillness in space seemed to stretch forever. The vastness of the universe around the two fleets felt almost suffocating as both sides prepared for something that no one could predict. The Xetherians, though known for their quick strikes, were unsure. They had never faced an enemy like this. The human starships, enormous and unyielding, loomed ahead like giants in the cold vacuum of space. On the bridge of the human flagship, Captain Jameson paced back and forth, the tension building inside him. He knew the Xetherians would make their move soon, but he was ready. He had prepared for this moment his entire career. The fate of humanity rested on the next few moments. "Captain, the Xetherians are powering up their weapons," reported Lieutenant Harris, his voice tinged with concern. Jameson nodded, his eyes narrowing. "They'll attack soon, then. It's what they do." Around him, the crew remained calm but alert. Every station was manned, every system double-checked. The human fleet was ready. They weren't backing down. The Xetherians, too, were preparing for battle. On their command ships, the alien leaders were growing impatient. Their eyes were fixed on the human fleet, their claws twitching in anticipation. The Supreme Leader had given the order for the Xetherian fleet to attack. It was what they had always done when faced with a threat. They would strike first, using their superior speed and firepower to overwhelm the enemy. It had never failed them before. "Fire on their lead ship," the Supreme Leader barked. The order was relayed instantly, and the Xetherian fleet launched their first salvo. Brilliant beams of energy shot from their ships, lighting up the void of space as they sped toward the human fleet. The blast was powerful enough to destroy an entire planet, but the humans did not flinch. The human starships had been prepared for this moment. Their massive energy shields activated instantly, surrounding the ships in a glowing, pulsating barrier. The Xetherian beams slammed into the shields with a tremendous explosion, but the shields held firm, absorbing the full force of the attack. The Xetherians watched in disbelief. The energy beams had been designed to destroy anything in their path, yet the human shields had not even faltered. The Xetherians had never seen such resilience. "Impossible," muttered one of the Xetherian commanders. "Their shields, they are stronger than we expected." Captain Jameson stood tall as the beams of energy rained against his shields. He felt the shudder of impact, but there was no panic. His hands rested steadily on the console in front of him. "Keep steady," he said calmly. "All systems are holding." Lieutenant Harris looked at the readings on his monitor. "Shields at full strength, Captain. We're fine." Jameson nodded, but he knew the Exetherians wouldn't stop there. They would keep attacking, testing the strength of the human defenses. The first wave had been only a demonstration, but the real battle was about to begin. On the Exetherian side, the Supreme Leader was furious. "Focus all fire on their lid ship," he ordered again. The Exetherian fleet unleashed a second round of fire, this time with even greater intensity. Their ships moved closer, drawing in their weapons for a more focused assault. But the human starships didn't move. They stood firm, their shields flickering slightly as the second barrage slammed against them. The humans had expected this. They had known the Exetherians would test their defenses, and they had built their ships to withstand it. "We've got them right where we want them," Captain Jameson said, a slight grin crossing his face. "Lieutenant Tran, prepare to send our message." The communications officer nodded, her fingers flying over the console. "Message ready, Captain." Jameson turned to his crew, his voice firm. "This is not about starting a war. This is about showing them that humanity won't back down. Send the message." As Lieutenant Tran activated the communication system, the human fleet broadcast a single, simple message to the Exetherians, one that would echo throughout the stars. "This is humanity. You will not break us. Leave us in peace, or we will show you the full power of our fleet." The Exetherians paused, taken aback by the defiance in the human message. The alien ships, having expected a quick victory, now found themselves facing an enemy that not only had the strength to withstand their attacks, but also the courage to stand their ground. The Supreme Leader's eyes narrowed in frustration. "Prepare for a final strike," he growled. "We will not be intimidated by this species." As the Exetherian fleet prepared for another attack, the tension continued to build. The humans knew that this was a test of their resolve. If the Exetherians were determined to fight, then humanity would fight back with everything they had. The fate of both species rested on the outcome of this encounter. But one thing was clear: the Exetherians had underestimated humanity. They thought they could break them with a few blasts of energy, but they had failed to realize the true power of the human spirit. The humans were not afraid. They would not back down. And now, the Exetherians were beginning to understand just how wrong they had been. The first shots had been fired. Now, the battle would truly begin. The human message: a new era. In the vast emptiness of space, the two fleets remained locked in a tense standoff. The Exetherians had unleashed their full power, throwing everything they had at the human fleet. And yet, the human starships stood firm, their energy shields absorbing the assault without a single ship showing signs of damage. The Exetherians, known for their devastating strikes, were starting to realize that the humans were not like the other species they had conquered. Aboard the human flagship, Captain Jameson watched the alien fleet, unmoved by their threats. His crew stood at attention, ready for whatever came next, but Jameson knew this battle was no longer just about survival. It was about sending a message to the galaxy. The humans had arrived, and they were here to stay. "Captain, the Exetherians are preparing for another round of fire," Lieutenant Harris said, his voice steady but laced with concern. "They're not giving up." Jameson nodded, his gaze fixed on the alien ships. "Let them come. We've shown them our strength. Now, let's show them our resolve." The Exetherians, in their arrogance, had expected the humans to cower before their might. They had underestimated not just the strength of humanity's ships, but the strength of its will. And now, as their fleet prepared to launch another barrage, the humans were ready to remind the galaxy of one simple truth: humanity would not back down. The communications officer, Lieutenant Tran, turned to Jameson. "Captain, we've sent them our message, but they're not responding." Jameson smiled, his voice calm yet firm. "Good. Let them stew. Let them wonder if we're bluffing. But we know what we've got, and they're about to find out." With the Exetherian fleet closing in, the time had come for the human fleet to make their next move. Captain Jameson was about to make a decision that would change everything. "Activate countermeasures," Jameson ordered, his voice filled with calm authority. "Prepare to show them what happens when you push humanity too far." As the human fleet's weapons powered up, the Exetherians prepared for their next strike, eager to finally bring down these so-called weak humans. But the moment they fired, the human ships responded in kind. With a flash of blinding light, the human fleet unleashed their own salvo of energy blasts. The Exetherian ships were not prepared for the sheer power of the human attack. Their defensive shields, though powerful, were not enough to withstand the overwhelming firepower of the human fleet. In a matter of seconds, one of the smaller Exetherian warships was struck by a blast so powerful that it erupted into a spectacular explosion, leaving nothing but debris behind. The Exetherians stared in shock as their first ship was destroyed. For the first time, they realized that they were not the only ones with the power to obliterate entire fleets. The human ships had been holding back, letting the Exetherians make their move, but now the tables had turned. The supreme leader of the Exetherian Empire watched the devastation unfold on his command ship. He had never seen anything like it. Their initial assumption had been wrong. Humanity was not weak. Their technology was advanced beyond anything the Exetherians had ever expected. This was no primitive species to be easily crushed. The supreme leader growled, his claws digging into the armrests of his chair. "Send all remaining firepower at them. We must crush them before their full might is revealed." But as the Exetherians prepared for another attack, something unexpected happened. The human fleet did not press their advantage. Instead, the flagship sent out a final, simple message, one that would echo across the stars. "This is humanity. You may have the power to destroy, but we have the power to survive. We come in peace, but make no mistake, we will defend ourselves. The choice is yours." The message was clear. Humanity was not here to conquer, but to protect their home. The Exetherians were being given a choice: either retreat and leave humanity in peace, or continue to fight and face the full wrath of the human fleet. The Exetherians hesitated. Their fleet had already suffered a loss, and the humans had shown they were more than capable of defending themselves. The supreme leader's mind raced. His empire had never faced a situation like this. In all their years of conquest, they had never encountered a race that could fight back so fiercely and with such unyielding determination. "Retreat," the supreme leader muttered, though he hated the words as they left his mouth. "Pull back the fleet. We will reconsider." It was the first time in history that the Exetherians had been forced to retreat before an enemy. The human fleet, though outnumbered, had shown strength, resolve, and the ability to strike back with terrifying precision. As the Exetherian fleet turned and began to withdraw, Captain Jameson stood tall on his ship, his gaze never leaving the retreating alien forces. His crew cheered, but Jameson's face remained stoic. The battle wasn't over, not for the Exetherians, and certainly not for humanity. "We've won this round," Jameson said quietly, "but the real war is just beginning." The human fleet had proven that they could defend themselves, but more importantly, they had proven that they were a force to be reckoned with. The Exetherians had learned a hard lesson that day. Humanity was not to be underestimated. And as the Exetherian fleet retreated, the message was clear to the galaxy. Humanity had arrived, and they would no longer be pushed around. This was the beginning of a new era, one where humans would stand tall among the stars, no longer cowering in the shadows of more powerful empires. The galaxy had just learned that humanity's strength came not just from their ships, but from their will to survive, and the Exetherians were the first to understand that lesson. The standoff. No one moves. As the Exetherian fleet retreated, the tension in the air was thick. The vast emptiness of space now felt eerily still, as though the entire galaxy was holding its breath. The human fleet watched the alien ships turn and begin their slow retreat, their once imposing formation now breaking apart. The Exetherians, for the first time in many centuries, were leaving. The prideful empire, once unbeatable, was backing down. On the bridge of the human flagship, Captain Jameson watched the retreating fleet with a mixture of satisfaction and caution. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The humans had proven themselves, but this was only the first step in making their mark in the galaxy. "Report, Lieutenant Harris," Jameson said, his voice steady but carrying the weight of the moment. Harris, who had been tracking the Exetherian movements on the ship's sensors, turned to face the captain. "The Exetherian fleet is retreating at maximum speed, Captain. Their warships are heading toward the edge of our system. They've suffered significant damage, but they're not engaging with us any further." Jameson nodded slowly. "We've made our point, but they'll be back. We need to stay alert." A silence fell over the bridge. The crew, all still processing what had just occurred, remained focused. They had faced down the most feared empire in the galaxy and had not only survived, but forced them to retreat. The human fleet had displayed strength and resilience like never before. But for all the pride the crew felt, they knew they couldn't let their guard down. Meanwhile, aboard the Exetherian fleet, the mood was far different. The Supreme Leader, having ordered the retreat, now sat in his command chair, his long fingers tightly gripping the armrests. His eyes burned with fury and confusion. He had never imagined that the humans would put up such a fight. Their sheer willpower had caught him off guard. And now, with his fleet damaged and retreating, he was left with a bitter taste of defeat. "Summon the War Council," the Supreme Leader said, his voice low and dangerous. Within moments, a group of his top generals and advisors arrived at his side, standing in a tense formation. The Supreme Leader did not waste time with pleasantries. He looked them all in the eye, his voice cold. "We underestimated them," he growled. "These humans, what have we learned from our encounter?" One of the generals, a tall, armored figure with sharp features, spoke up. "Their ships are powerful. Their shields are unlike anything we've encountered. And their weaponry, it was overwhelming. But it is their will to fight, their refusal to back down, that concerns me the most. They do not fear us." Another advisor added, "They also gave us a warning. They didn't engage fully. They could have destroyed our entire fleet, but they didn't. They are not only powerful, but they are also strategic. We underestimated them in every way." The Supreme Leader's expression hardened. "We will not make that mistake again. Prepare the fleet for a full-scale counteroffensive. This time, we will not leave anything to chance." The room fell silent, but the atmosphere was tense. The Exetherians were proud, and the sting of their first defeat in a long time burned deeply. However, deep inside, there was a dawning realization that humanity had just changed the balance of power in the galaxy. They had forced the Exetherians to retreat, and that fact would resonate across the stars. Back on the human fleet, Captain Jameson stood at the command center, watching the distant stars on the vast display screen. His mind was focused on the future, but he was aware of how significant this moment was. Humanity had stood up to the most powerful empire in the galaxy, and they had won. "Captain," Lieutenant Tran said, breaking the silence, "the Exetherians are retreating out of our system. We've successfully defended our territory." Jameson took a deep breath, but his expression remained serious. "This is just the beginning. We have shown them that we can defend ourselves, but there's no telling how far they will go to regain their pride. We need to prepare for what comes next." A crew member, Sergeant Davis, looked over at Jameson. "Do you think they'll attack again?" Jameson's gaze remained fixed on the retreating Exetherian fleet, his thoughts deep. "They'll come back. And next time, they won't underestimate us. But we're ready for them." The human fleet had shown incredible strength, resilience, and unity. They had sent a clear message to the galaxy. Humanity would no longer be overlooked. The Exetherians, once certain of their superiority, were now left to reconsider their approach. But as the human fleet stood strong, it was clear that a new era had begun. As the Exetherians retreated, both sides knew that this standoff was just the first chapter of a much larger conflict. The Exetherians would regroup, their pride demanding retribution. But the humans would stand their ground, ready to face whatever challenges the galaxy would throw their way. In the vastness of space, a new power had risen, and it was not one that would be easily defeated. Resolution, the humans' victory. As the Exetherian fleet faded into the depths of space, the silence that followed was almost deafening. The human fleet stood motionless in the cold vacuum of space, their ships still intact, their weapons powered down. It had been a battle like no other, and though they had won, the weight of that victory lingered in the air. Captain Jameson stood at the helm of the flagship, his eyes fixed on the stars ahead. The immediate threat had been neutralized, but his mind was already thinking of the future. The Exetherians had retreated, but the war was far from over. The message had been sent, but the consequences of this encounter would ripple across the galaxy. "Captain," Lieutenant Harris said, his voice breaking the quiet moment. "The Exetherians are out of our system. Our sensors show no sign of their fleet. They've retreated, just as we thought." Jameson nodded slowly. "We've made our point, but we can't let our guard down. We've only just begun to show them who we are." Behind him, the crew exchanged looks of relief and pride. The humans had achieved what few would have thought possible. They had stood up to the Exetherians, fought back with all their might, and won. No one had expected the humans to be able to go toe-to-toe with the galaxy's most feared empire. But here they were, stronger than ever, proving to the universe that humanity was no longer the underdog. A few moments later, the communications officer, Lieutenant Tran, looked up from her station. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council." Jameson's eyes narrowed. The Galactic Council was the governing body of many of the known galaxies, made up of representatives from various species and empires. The Exetherians were members, but the Council had always been neutral, until now. Humanity's victory over the Exetherians was bound to send shockwaves through the Council, and the message they sent would be crucial. "Patch it through, Lieutenant," Jameson ordered. The image of the Galactic Council's representative appeared on the screen in front of him. The representative was a member of the Zorathi, a race known for their diplomacy and wisdom, but also for their cold pragmatism. The Zorathi leader studied Jameson for a moment before speaking. "Captain Jameson, I must admit, I did not expect such an outcome. The Exetherian Empire is a force unlike any other, and yet you have driven them back. Your actions have not only changed the course of your people's history, but they have also forced us to reconsider the balance of power in this galaxy." Jameson stood tall, his voice calm but resolute. "We did not seek this fight, but when the Exetherians threatened our people, we had no choice but to defend ourselves, and we will continue to do so if necessary. We may be new to this galaxy, but we are not weak." The Zorathi leader nodded slowly. "Indeed, the Council will have much to discuss in the coming days. But know this, Captain Jameson. Your victory has made it clear that humanity is not a race to be ignored. You have proven your strength, your resolve, and your capacity to defend yourselves." Jameson didn't flinch. "We are not here to conquer, but we will not be conquered. If the galaxy is to respect humanity, it will be on our terms." The Zorathi leader seemed to weigh his words carefully before responding. "The galaxy may have underestimated you, Captain, but that will not happen again. You have made your place in the stars, and for better or worse, the galaxy will have to reckon with your people." With that, the transmission ended, and the screen returned to a simple view of the distant stars. Jameson took a moment to let the weight of what had just been said sink in. The words of the Zorathi representative were significant, but there was no time to rest on their laurels. Humanity had won this battle, but the true test lay ahead. Turning to his crew, Jameson spoke with quiet authority. "We've proven ourselves today, but there will be more battles. The Exetherians won't stay quiet for long. We need to stay vigilant, Stay strong. This victory is just the beginning." His words were met with nods of agreement from his crew. There was no celebration, no cheering. They knew what was at stake, but there was a quiet sense of pride among them, knowing that they had accomplished something remarkable. The fight wasn't over, but humanity had shown the galaxy that they could stand tall against any threat. As the human fleet began to move forward, the stars ahead seemed to glow just a little bit brighter. The message had been sent. The Exetherians had been forced to retreat. And though the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear: humanity was here to stay, and they would not be easily forgotten. The galaxy had witnessed the strength of humanity, and no one would ever underestimate them again.